The rain had begun as a light drizzle, whispering against the windshield of Emily's sleek black car. But within minutes, the downpour had transformed the streets of New York into a glistening, treacherous river. Neon signs blurred in the streaks of water, and the tires of her vehicle hissed across the slick asphalt. Emily gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. Her mind was clouded with a mixture of grief and frustration, the memory of her late husband haunting every turn. She had faced challenges before, but tonight, the city itself seemed determined to remind her of life's unpredictability. As she sped down the street, a sudden flash of light reflected off the wet pavement, momentarily blinding her. Her heart skipped a beat, and the car jerked uncontrollably. Panic surged through her veins. She tried to steer, tried to regain control, but the rain had claimed traction. In a heartbeat, the car skidded sideways, careening toward a roadside barrier. The sound of metal scraping against steel echoed in the storm. Emily's body tensed, bracing for impact. Her heart pounded, a frantic rhythm matching the storm outside. Time seemed to stretch as her world spun, and she realized how powerless one could be in the face of chaos. Miles away, Jake wiped the sweat from his brow, finishing up the last repairs of the day in his small garage. The dim lights illuminated, the greasy tools, and the scent of motor oil lingered in the air. Jake was young, barely in his 20s, but life had already thrown its weight on him. Every day was a struggle to pay bills, provide for his little daughter, and keep his dream of owning a successful repair shop alive. He had learned to be vigilant, to expect the unexpected, but nothing had prepared him for the sudden crash that would change everything in the span of a few seconds. A sharp, metallic noise cut through the rain. Jake froze mid-motion, instinct kicking in. He peered out of his garage window and saw a car smashed against a barrier, rain pouring down in sheets around it. Instinct overrode caution. Without a second thought, he grabbed his raincoat and sprinted across the soaked pavement, heart hammering. He pushed through the storm as if he had been called for a reason, the city's chaos fading behind him. Each step was an adrenaline-fueled dash against time. He didn't know the woman inside, didn't know what awaited him, but he knew someone needed help, and he was going to be there. Emily was trapped, her leg pinned under the dashboard. Fear gripped her as the water splashed around her, soaking her elegant clothes. The luxury of her life, the money, the connections all felt meaningless in that moment. A voice called out, distant but commanding. Jake's presence was like a beacon in the storm. He crouched beside her, assessing the damage and her injuries with calm efficiency. "It's okay, I've got you," he said, his voice steady, grounding. Emily's trembling hands clutched his arm instinctively, as if holding on to hope itself. His reassurance cut through the panic, offering a strange comfort she hadn't felt in years. With careful movements, Jake worked to free her leg, his hands strong but gentle. Emily winced, biting her lip to hold back a scream. The rain plastered her hair to her face, and water ran down her cheeks, but his focus never wavered. He positioned the car jack, assessed the door, and finally pried it open enough to lift her out. Step by step, he guided her onto the wet pavement. She shivered from cold and shock, but there was gratitude in her eyes. The storm seemed less threatening now, as if his presence alone had created a small island of safety amidst the chaos. Jake helped her toward his garage, the tiny haven just a block away. Emily felt absurd, embarrassed even, being led by a stranger through the rain, but she couldn't deny the relief flooding her senses. Inside, the warmth hit her immediately, a stark contrast to the relentless chill outside. Jake handed her a towel, and she wrapped herself, shivering but slowly regaining composure. Her expensive heels squelched with each step, the sound foreign in the humble space filled with tools, car parts, and the scent of grease. She looked around, realizing how starkly her world contrasted with his, yet somehow, it felt grounding, real, unpretentious, honest. Jake worked silently to make her comfortable, setting a chair and offering a glass of water. Emily, used to always being in control, felt vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She watched him move with skill, repairing minor damages on her car as if it were an extension of his own hands. There was a rhythm to him, a combination of strength and care. The way he explained what he was doing, patiently, without talking down to her, caught her off guard. He treated her not as a client or a wealthy socialite, but as a person. Something inside her stirred curiosity, admiration, maybe even something deeper. The rain outside gradually eased, leaving the world damp but quiet. Emily noticed the little things, the flicker of a light bulb overhead, the hum of tools in the background, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the garage. Jake's little daughter peeked from behind a workbench, eyes wide but trusting. Emily smiled faintly, touched by the simple warmth of the scene. For the first time in years, she felt disconnected from the pressures of her previous life. In Jake's presence, there was no pretense, no judgment, just honesty and genuine care. The storm had passed, but the emotional turbulence had only just begun. Hours felt like minutes as they talked in soft, cautious conversation. Emily shared fragments of her life loss, loneliness, and the overwhelming demands of wealth. Jake listened without interruption, nodding, asking gentle questions that drew her out. She realized he wasn't just kind, he was attentive, intelligent, and quietly resilient. Each story he told of his struggles, his perseverance, made her admire him more. The rain had forced them together, two strangers from different worlds. Yet there was an undeniable connection growing. By the time she left, her car repaired and her spirits lifted. Emily knew that her life had shifted in a way she could never have anticipated. On the walk back to her car, Emily glanced at Jake, realizing that the initial shock of the accident had transformed into something profound. It wasn't just about the rescue, it was about perspective. She had spent so long prioritizing wealth and appearances, never noticing the quiet strength of people like Jake. He had shown her courage, kindness, and humanity, qualities money could never buy. Emily's heart, long guarded, felt an unfamiliar warmth. She silently vowed to return, to see him again, not as a fleeting encounter but as the start of a deeper, more meaningful chapter in her life. The city lights reflected on the wet streets. As Emily drove away, feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. The accident had been terrifying, yes, but it had also opened her eyes. Jake, the young mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart of gold, had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that life's most profound moments often come when we least expect them. As she disappeared into the night, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The rain had changed everything, not just her car, not just her night, but the trajectory of her life, steering her towards something extraordinary and unforeseen. Jake led Emily into a small garage, shaking off the rain from his coat. The contrast between the stormy chaos outside and the modest warmth inside was stark. Emily's designer heels left small puddles on the concrete floor as she followed him, taking in the sight of worn tools, scattered car parts, and the faint smell of motor oil. Despite its simplicity, there was a sense of order, a quiet care in the way Jake moved. For the first time that day, Emily felt a sense of safety. The storm outside battered the city, but inside, a fragile calm seemed to settle around them. Emily couldn't help but feel a pang of curiosity mixed with unease. Her life had always revolved around luxury and control, yet here she was, drenched and vulnerable, in the hands of someone whose world couldn't be more different. She studied Jake carefully, his sleeves rolled up, arms coated in grease, hands deftly handling the damaged parts of her car. There was a quiet confidence in him, a natural skill born from experience and necessity. He didn't rush, didn't patronize. Every movement was measured, precise. She felt a strange sense of admiration building, unspoken, for this man who lived in simplicity yet exuded quiet competence. As Jake worked on the car, Emily sat on a nearby stool, shivering but slowly regaining composure. She wrapped herself in a spare blanket he offered, her hair plastered to her face. For a moment, the outside world, the flashing lights, the honking cars, the rain seemed to vanish. All that existed was the rhythm of his hands moving, the occasional clink of a tool, and the warmth radiating from his focused presence. Emily had spent years surrounded by people who were polite but distant, professional yet hollow. Here, in this small garage, she sensed honesty, a raw sincerity she hadn't felt in ages. It was startling in its simplicity. "Do you need some water?" Jake asked without looking up. His voice was calm, grounding. Emily accepted the bottle, her hands still trembling slightly. She took a sip, noting the warmth it brought against her chilled body. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside her heart. Fear, relief, curiosity, and a creeping sense of fascination with this young mechanic who seemed so different from anyone she'd ever known. He smiled faintly at her, a small, reassuring gesture. She smiled back, awkwardly at first, then with a hint of laughter as the tension of the day began to ease. "Most people would just wait for a tow," Emily remarked, trying to make conversation. Jake shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "Not me," he said simply. "I help where I can." His honesty was striking. She felt an unusual warmth spreading in her chest. He wasn't acting for recognition or reward. This was genuine, uncalculated care. Emily realized that, for the first time in a long while, she was seeing someone unfiltered, authentic. She found herself studying him, the way his eyes focused, the slight crease of concentration on his brow. There was something magnetic about his presence, a gravity that drew her in. Time passed almost imperceptibly as he continued to work. Emily watched as he replaced a broken part, checked the engine, and made small adjustments with skillful precision. She was fascinated not only by his talent but by the patient determination in his movements. In his world, each problem demanded attention and respect, not wealth or status. She found herself opening up, telling him little things about her life, her grief, the emptiness she often felt, the pressure of maintaining an image. Jake listened intently, never interrupting, nodding when appropriate. Emily felt lighter talking to him than she had with anyone in years. A sudden crash of thunder shook the building, and Emily flinched, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself. Jake chuckled softly. "Storm's fierce tonight," he said, continuing his work undisturbed. She felt a flicker of envy at his ability to stay calm in chaos. She realized she'd been so controlled, so calculated, that she often forgot how to simply exist in a moment, to react without fear. His presence was grounding, reminding her of something she had almost lost: her instinct, her humanity. She laughed lightly, a sound that surprised her. It felt good, real, spontaneous. And Jake glanced up, returning the smile with something like quiet approval. The storm began to taper, but Emily lingered, reluctant to leave. Her car was repaired, functional, but she found herself captivated by the garage, by Jake, by the entire experience. She realized that in this humble place, he had glimpsed a world she had never known, a world where actions mattered more than appearances, where sincerity was more valuable than status. She felt a strange sense of longing, not for material things, but for authenticity, for a connection that was untainted by pretense. Jake, unaware of the depth of her reflection, continued his work, focused but patient. "Thank you, Jake," she said softly when he finally stepped back. "For everything." He shrugged again, modestly, brushing his hands off. "Just doing what anyone should do," he replied. But Emily sensed there was more to him than modesty, a quiet pride, not in wealth, but in competence, in integrity. She wanted to ask more, to know more, but words seemed inadequate. Instead, she simply watched him, appreciating the rhythm of his actions, the unassuming power in his presence. There was no rush, no forced conversation, just a shared understanding born from an unexpected encounter. Before leaving, Emily hesitated at the doorway. I don't know when I'll get a chance to thank you properly," she admitted. Jake smiled faintly. "Just take care out there." "That's thanks enough," he said. The simplicity of his words struck her. She realized that in this brief, rain-soaked encounter, she had learned more about life, courage, and trust than she had in years of socializing in wealth and comfort. The accident that had seemed disastrous now felt like a turning point, a moment where her carefully controlled life had cracked open, allowing something real, something human, to enter. Emily drove away slowly, the rain leaving a misty sheen over the streets. Her thoughts churned as she replayed the encounter, every detail of Jake's care etched into her memory. She understood that the world she had known, the luxurious dinners, the lavish parties, the constant scrutiny, was only one facet of existence. There was another side, quieter but more profound, full of authenticity and genuine human connection. She felt an unexpected spark of excitement and hope. Perhaps life had delivered her here, not just for help with her car, but to guide her toward a different, deeper understanding of what mattered. Over the following days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Jake. She found herself revisiting the memory of the garage, the storm, the quiet moments of conversation. She realized that his presence had left an imprint she couldn't ignore. It wasn't just admiration, it was curiosity, a desire to know him, to understand his world. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of possibility. Life had a way of surprising people, of crossing paths in unexpected ways. The mechanic who had rescued her wasn't just a fleeting hero, he was someone who might change everything she thought she knew about herself and her life. Weeks later, Emily returned to the garage, this time with purpose. She wanted to see him again, not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest. Jake looked up from his work, surprised but smiling. The rain had long since passed, but the impact of that night remained. Their conversation flowed easily now, laughter blending with quiet moments of shared reflection. Emily realized she was drawn not to his skill alone, but to his integrity, his simplicity, his unwavering authenticity. In Jake, she saw a world she wanted to explore, a world of truth, warmth, and connection she had almost forgotten existed. Over time, Emily and Jake grew closer, their bond strengthening with shared experiences and quiet trust. The accident had been a catalyst, but it was their continued interaction that deepened the connection. Emily felt alive in ways she hadn't felt in years, inspired by Jake's resilience and grounded nature. He, in turn, was drawn to her intelligence, her vulnerability, and the courage she displayed in letting herself open up. Together, they navigated the complexities of their different worlds, learning from one another, growing, and discovering a rare, unexpected love forged in the aftermath of a storm. Eventually, Emily understood that life's most transformative moments often came from the unexpected, the uncontrollable. The rain, the accident, the garage all were threads woven together to create a tapestry she hadn't anticipated. In Jake, she had found not just a mechanic, but a partner, a confidant, someone who reminded her of the power of sincerity and human connection. And in Emily, Jake had found someone who inspired him to dream bigger, to embrace life's possibilities beyond the small struggles of his everyday routine. The storm had passed, but its mark remained, shaping their future in ways neither could have foreseen. In the end, the rainstorm that had seemed like a disaster turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Emily's carefully controlled life had been shaken, revealing a world rich with honesty, care, and love. Jake, once a humble mechanic, had become the center of a profound transformation. They discovered that wealth and status were fleeting, but courage, integrity, and connection endured. As they walked side by side, looking back at the garage for one last glance, they knew that the night of rain and chaos had changed them forever, and in that change, they had found each other.